Hello everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. So in this video, we will go over Lab 8C, and this is the first question. So basically it says that you're supposed to write a method. The name of the method is distance traveled, and it takes as input speed of a car and duration of a trip. The speed is in kilometers per hour, and then the duration is in minutes. The method should return the distance that is traveled rounded to the nearest kilometer. Hint, use the math.round method to round the result, and then your code needs to follow all these requirements. You must comment appropriately. Code should be efficient. All number literals need to be constant. Now, first of all, let's try to create the method. The name of the method is distance traveled, and we know whenever we create a method, we need to write public static. Now, in this question, it is not mentioned what return type should be, but it is mentioned that you're returning basically the distance. So from here, from the result itself, I can see there are no decimal points. So I'm going to assume that it is an integer that we're going to return. All right, so sometimes if the question doesn't say what kind of return type it is, then you can look at the result and see what kind of number or value is being returned, and you will then figure out. All right, so in this case, I'll choose int, and then um, the name of the method, distance traveled, brackets, and then here I will choose double for speed and double for duration, because I feel like the speed can be 40 point something, and then the duration can also be in decimal. But sometimes you don't know, like in this case it's not mentioned. So what you can do is basically write your code in the most suitable way that you think that you can think of, and then using the pre-check and check, try to figure out what results are required, and then amend your code accordingly. All right. So here we have the speed, and then we have the duration. We need to figure out the distance. Basically, the formula for finding out speed is actually distance divided by time. All right. So if I know the speed and if I know the time, how do I find the difference? I just move time to the other side, so that the formula becomes time. The formula becomes distance is equal to speed multiplied by time, because I moved time here, and because here it was being divided, so on the other side it becomes as multiplication. So this is the formula for distance. Keeping this in mind, you can write double distance is equal to speed multiplied by duration. And now duration is mentioned that it is in minutes. All right. So, and we have the speed, which was in kilometers per hour. So if you want to change or convert minutes to hours, you can just divide the duration with 60, and that will give you hours, because the speed is an hour, right? So the all the metrics should be the same. So in this case, this formula will give you distance. Speed multiplied by duration. Why did we change it to, why did we divide it by 60? Because we need to keep the metric same. You can't have minutes and then the speed in another metric. So now all you need to do is return, because we're returning it as an int, right? So cast it and then use math.round and pass the distance, and that should be it. So if I click on pre-check, here it's correct. And if I click on check, perfect. So that's your question one. Okay, so this is the second question of Lab 8C, I think. In this question, we're supposed to create a method. It should be called Fibonacci. If you know this, it's a mathematical concept. And this method should compute the nth Fibonacci number, n being given as parameter. So this method, n will be given as a parameter. It's an integer because if you look at the examples, everything is a number without any decimals. There's a note which says in mathematics the Fibonacci numbers. I don't know why I keep saying series. The Fibonacci numbers, commonly denoted by Fn, form a sequence called the Fibonacci sequence, such that each number is the sum of the two preceding ones, starting from 0 and 1. The beginning of this sequence is 0, 1. So if you notice, 0 plus 1 actually gives you 1. So that's why this is 1. Now, 1 plus 1 gives you 2. That's why this is 2. 1 plus 2 gives you 3. That's why this is 3. And then 2 plus 3 gives you 5. That's why this is 5. Similarly, 3 plus 5 gives you 8. And then 8 plus 5 gives you 13, and so on. So each number is basically the sum of the previous two numbers. All right. Now, you're supposed to code this. All right. For example, the fourth number in the sequence is equal to 3. So if you start from 0, considering this is the 0 index, so 0, 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4. So the fourth number in this sequence is 3 basically, right? So if we notice here, the fourth number in the sequence is equal to 3 because the two previous numbers in the sequence are 1 and 2. All right, and the fifth number, which is this one, is 5 because 3 and 2 makes it 5. Similarly, the sixth number is 8 because 3 and 5 add up to 8. All right, so again, you need to consider counting from 0. So this is your 0 sequence, and then so on and so forth. Okay. Now, again, the requirements should be there. When you test it, at the fourth position, or at the fourth number in the sequence is 3, so that the result should be given, you should give out the result 3, and then the fifth number basically is 5. So here is 5. So 0, you should count from 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the fifth number is 5. That's why you need to give out 5 or print out 5. Okay. Now, how do we code this method? First of all, let's create the header, copy the method name, and since it doesn't mention anything about return, actually it does mention something about return. That computes the nth. I don't know if it is written here. It's not written that you should return anything, but if you, which is a fault and it should be mentioned, but if you look at the test, when you call the method, it's actually returning something, right? So we're going to assume that it's going to return something, because if you call the method and it's void and it's not returning anything, the system print line will not print anything, right? So in this case, I'm hoping that it's an integer because there is no decimal point to the number. So again, public static void, sorry, not void, my bad, int, and then name of the method, Fibonacci, int n, because it was mentioned that n is given as a parameter here, n being given as a parameter. Now, slowly we'll understand what is happening, because it is basically repeating, right? It's starting from a number and it's repeatedly adding to get the next number. So if I add 0 plus 1, I'll get the next number, which is 1. If I add 1 plus 1, I'll get the next number, which is 2. So kind of a repetition is happening until the n number, whatever that number is, until the number n, right? So in this case, I'll create 3 variables. Int first, okay, next, not next, wait, int first, second, and let's call it sum. Okay, and that should be it. So I'll create three variables. We'll look at we'll look at the requirement or why we have created these variables, but we need three variables. All right, so and the next thing is, because we're repeating, we need a loop, right? So for int I is equal to 0, I should be less than or less than n, and then plus plus I, or you can name it uh, count, whatever you want to name it. I'm naming it I because I didn't find any better name for this. But or you can name it step also. I think step is a better name. Step means increment. All right. So I'm starting from 0, and I'll be going until the number, whatever that number is, and I'll keep incrementing. Now the first, so whatever number I'm going to be using here, I'll give it a default value. So in this case, now what is the requirement or what is the need of the first number or the first variable? The first variable, I'll be using it to denote the first number in the sequence. All right, every first number in the sequence. And the second variable, I'll use it for denoting every second number in the sequence. For example, if we're just starting the loop, first will be 0, second will be 1. For the next iteration, first will become 1, second will become 1. For the other iteration, first will become 1, second will become 2. And then for the next one, first will become 2, and then second will become 3. So we keep moving forward and we keep remembering the sum. All right. So now I'll just give them default values here, because if you use any variable without any value being given to it, it will result in an error. So first should be equal to, in this case, it's starting from 0, right? So first is 0, and then second is 1. So first is 0, second is 1. Sum, you can keep it as 0, keep it as any other number, it's up to you, because it will keep changing. All right. Now I've already started from 0 and I've already started from 1. I don't need to go back to 0 again because I already have 0 and 1, right? So what I'll do is basically I'll start from 2. All right. So I'll change the starting point of the loop to 2. And then because I'm not starting from 0, I should make this equal. Okay. Now, once I'm done with that, what I'll do is I'll say sum is equal to first plus second, right? So the sum, which is, let's say if we're at 0 and 1, the sum of this will become 1. So we're storing 1 here in sum, all right? Now I want to move to the next numbers, which is my first number should become 1, and I'll just copy it down so we can refer to it while we're coding. Okay, so my first number is, right now my first number is 0 and my second number is 1. Within the loop, when I start the loop, the first number will become, oh sorry, the sum will become 0 plus 1, which is 1. So the sum becomes 1, right? Now I want to move my first to the next number, also my second to the next number. Previously first was 0, so I want it to become 1, and I want second to become also 1, because the third number is 1, right? So what I can do is I will write first is equal to second. Why did I do that? Because second currently holds the value for 1, right? So when I want to move first to second, I need to give it the value of second. But I want second to now have the value of sum. Just keep this in mind. The first number is denoted here as first. Okay, let's say this is first. this is second, okay, and this one is the sum. Now, if I want first to become 1, I should assign it the value of second. And if I want second to become 1, I should assign it the value of sum. That's exactly what I will do. I'll change second and I'll assign it the value of sum. All right. And yeah, I'll just keep doing that. So once I get this sum, I will change my first to second, second to sum, and then in the next iteration, sum becomes first and second. All right. So here you should finally return second. Why? Or you can return sum. Up to you. It's fine because both of them will store the same value at the end. And that should be how it's coded. But before that, I want you to see what is actually happening. Before we do any of that, I want you to see um, what is happening with first. All right. Actually, let's print it here. First, second, because this is getting changed, I will also print it here. Okay, so let's see if I run this, what happens. Again, because nothing is in the main method, I'll just call this method and print the first, let's say, 12 numbers. Okay, they're printing on different lines. I want you to see them on the same line, first of all. See what's happening? First, it's taking 0 and then 1. All right, then the next time your first is 1, your second. So the first time your first is 1, and then your second is 1. Sorry, your first is 0 and your second is 1. The next time your first is 1, your second is 0. If it becomes better, maybe if you see it this way. Yes, I think this is better. In the first iteration, your starting is 0 and your first is 0 and your second is 1. In the next iteration, your first becomes 1 and your second becomes 1 also. In the third iteration, your first becomes 1 and your second becomes 2, and so on and so forth. And your sum basically is storing um, the sum of first and second. So if you want to see the sum, let's calculate it before, and then let's display the sum also. So see what is happening. Your first is 0, your second is 1, so the sum is 1. Your first is 1, your second is 1, so your sum is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on and so forth. See, this is better. Sorry, I'm changing it a lot, but I think this is the only way of understanding what's happening. So these are your first, these are your second, and this is the sum. And for each of them, it's calculating the sum, and the final one, it should return, right? So if I print this out finally here, it should print the last number for me, which is 144. And it did. All right. So that's basically how you do it. It's difficult to get to it in the first few times, but I promise if you practice it, it will make more sense. If you have any doubts, any questions about it, please feel free to let me know. But the only thing is just keep in mind you're just taking two numbers, calculating their sum to find the next number. And you keep doing that until you have done it this number of times. All right. And whatever that number is finally, that is the number you send back. All right. So I'll copy this code and I'll paste it in Code Runner and let's see what happens. So here I've pasted the code. Let's click on pre-check. Oh, okay. Comment. So that's fine. Click on check and that's it. That's it for this question. Notice how the fifth number is 5, the 13th number is 13. Oh, sorry, the seventh number is 13, the fifth number is 5, the 16th number is 9, 8, 7, so on and so forth. So all it does is it takes two numbers, calculates its sum to get the following number, and then whatever, how many ever times you have to repeat it according to n, that many times you repeat it, and finally whatever number you find, you return that back. All right, so for the third question, I've copied the question and pasted it in NetBeans. So it says that we're supposed to write a method. The name of the method should be format currency, and it should take as input a double. And so notice the word takes is being used. So that means there's a parameter involved. And it prints it to the screen as formatted in this way. If a digit is not present, do not display anything. Requirements, again, all those requirements from your code should be met. And then there is an example also given. If you use the method in this way, it should print out the number using this format. So if you notice, after the decimal point, there are two digits. And then before the decimal point, every three digits are being separated using a comma, as shown here. And then at the beginning of the number itself, there's a dollar symbol. Now, any time the question says or uses the word formatted, you need to use decimal format in your code, or any other kind of format that you are aware of and you've been using. But for this question, I'll be using decimal format. So I think let's try to create the method. I'll create it here. So remember how every method needs to start with public static. And you just copy the name of the method. But before that, notice the question doesn't use the word return anywhere. If the question doesn't mention anything about return and it's for a method, then you're supposed to write void. If it mentions anything about return, for example, write a method that does so and so and returns something. So in that case, whatever is the return type that is referred in the question, you need to use that. For example, if you're returning a number, use int. If you're returning true or false, use boolean. So according to whatever needs to be returned. But in this case, there is no mention of the word return. So that's why I'm using void. Okay. Now just paste the name of the method, and within the two round brackets, within these two brackets, we need to put the parameter. Now for the parameter, it should the question should either say takes or it should either use the word parameter. So in this case, it's using the word takes, right? If takes is mentioned, then whatever is being mentioned, that is considered as parameter. So in this case, it's mentioning as input a double, right? So I'll use that here, double. I will name it whatever I want to name it. In this case, it's best to name it amount because we are somehow dealing with currency. So amount would be a good word. You can name it number, you can name it whatever you want, but it's usually preferable that you give your variables the name according to the value that they're holding. All right. So now your two brackets, and that is your method. This is the method header, and then this is the method body. Now within this method, like I said, the question is using the word formatted. So in this case, I will use decimal format. How do we create the object for that? You just write the word decimal and then format. Notice D and F should be capital. Give it a name. I'll name it FMT is equal to the keyword new and the same word that I'm using here. So I'll copy this word and then I'll paste it here. All right. And then two brackets, double quotations, single quotes. Leave it like that. I'll explain what needs to go within the single quotes in a minute. But before that, if we notice, it is giving me an error here. It's saying cannot find symbol decimal format. That's because we're using decimal format without importing what is required for using that decimal format. So all I'm going to do is click on this icon here and add import for Java text decimal format. If I press on this, it adds that import for me and the error is gone. So anytime you want to use decimal format, you need to import java.text.decimal format, just like if you're using scanner and you have to import java.util.scanner. So that's the same way. Now the question is what goes within these two double quotes. All right. Now here here you have to specify the format that you want to use. So my number, as I can see, it's displaying in the beginning the dollar symbol, right? So that's the first thing that I will add because I know that's being displayed. Now there are two options that I have. Either I use hash, okay, or I use 0. Now I'll tell you what's the difference between the two. First, let's start with 0 and then point, or let's start with hash. So hash, hash, hash dot hash. So I've kept a dollar symbol. I have a hash symbol, a dot for the decimal, and then two hash for displaying the decimal, displaying the digits after the decimal. Okay, after the point. Now, notice what happens. If I print it out here, let's say, how do I print it first? I have to use the FMT, the decimal format object. So I'll write FMT dot. It gives me a lot of options. I can choose any format. So like any format method. So I'll just write format. Okay. Any format. You can pick anything. Format. Let's say I'll pick the second one. Format. And then you will send whatever variable you have. So again, use the, it's just like using scanner dot next. The same way, you just use decimal format, the object that you have created, the dot symbol, the format method, and pass the number that you want to format. All right. Now, before anything else, how do we call this method? We've learned it in this lesson. You use the name of the method, and if it has any parameters, you have to pass those parameters as well. So, and like we remember from the previous classes that if your main method is empty, nothing will work. For example, if I try to run this code now, see, nothing got displayed because my main method is empty. Your program always starts running from the main method. If your main method is empty, nothing will happen. But let's say if I print out something like hello, it will print out hello for me because that is what is present in the main method. But the code that I've written is present here, right? In this method. How do I call this method? So whatever I've written here gets executed. For that, you just need to use the name of the method first. So let's say I'll write format currency, and then I've written the name of the method. Now there's an error. It's telling me method format currency cannot be applied to given types. It says required. Okay, if I click on it, it says required is double and found is no arguments. That means this method, it's saying that this method actually requires a double to be sent to it, but you're not sending anything. All right. If I try to send a string, it will still give me an error. It will tell me that incompatible types, string cannot be converted to double because the method is expecting a double value and you're sending, a string. So it's incompatible. So you use the name of the method and then you send whatever value you want to send. Let's say I want to send the same value that is being used in the test. And let's see what happens. It is printing it correctly for me. But what happens if I use the number 4 point, let's say 50? See, it didn't display the second digit for me. It should have displayed that digit for me, like because I've given it that digit, but it's not displaying. What happens if I make this one 0 as well? This one is being displayed, but then the other one is not being displayed. Hash basically is, it means display the number, but if the number is 0, don't display it. All right. Now, if I change it to 0, what happens? It printed that 0 for me, but it didn't print this 0. Like here, it didn't print the 0, but here it printed the 0 for me. All right. So that's the only difference. If you want the 0 to be displayed in any of the digits, then you have to use 0. If you don't want the digit 0 to be displayed, then you would use hash. All right. So if I keep all of them hash, again, it will not display the ending 0 for me, which it didn't. So now the question is, you need to separate all the your digits. After every 3 digits, you need to have a comma, right? How do I do that? And notice the code, the question said, if a digit is not present, do not display anything. That means if the digit was 0, then don't display anything, because if it is any other digit, then it is present. But if it is 0, then it's not present, like 5.50, right? Here the 0 is not present. If it wouldn't make a difference if you remove it. So if that's the case, then don't display it. That literally means use hash. All right, because if you use 0, it will display that 0, just like how I just showed here. If I use the 2 zeros, it is displaying that 0 for me. So if I make all of them hash, it will not display the extra zeros or the digits that are not present. Oops. Or the digits that are not present, but I need to separate them with 3 after 3 digits, right? So 1 2 3 comma 1 2 3. That's the format that it is requesting. So 1 2 3 comma 1 2 3 dot and then 2 digits. So that's how you would code it. If I run this, now it's fine. If I use this test here, and now it's perfectly fine because it's displaying the same thing. So I'll now copy this code to code runner and let's see if it is correct. Now here I've pasted the code. Let's click on pre-check. Oh, okay. I need to comment it. This is print result. And so here, let's add format pre-check. Oh my god, too many comments. What can be one more comment? Pre-check. Okay, so now it's correct. Make sure to add comments again. And then if you click on check, should be fine. Perfect. So that's your third question. So this is the fourth question now. Sorry for that. And let's go over it and let's see how to code for it. So the first thing here, it's mentioned that you're supposed to write a method. The name of the method should be triangle print. So I'll copy that. And it should take one number as parameter as the height of the triangle and displays a triangle of stars. So that means if the number that was passed to this method was 5, it should print a triangle like this, meaning it should start from 1 star. It should print odd number of stars, right? It should print 1 star and then 3 stars and then 5 stars, which is the maximum here, and then again back to 3 and then 1. The same if it was 3, then you should print 1 and then 3 and then 1 again. So the height is 3, but then the largest number of stars is also 3. All right. Here it mentions, here are 2 examples, all of that. So before that, before we go further, let's try to create the method header. Here the name of the method is triangle print. It takes one number as parameter, which is the height of the triangle. So I'll just write that here. Again, it doesn't mention anything about returning. So if you read here, it doesn't mention any word return. So I would keep it void. But before that, you need to write 2 words, which is public and then static. Okay, so I've written public static. Now, sorry, this is from the previous one. I can clear it. Okay, public static, and here void, because the question doesn't mention anything about return, and you paste the name of the method, brackets, and because it mentions the word takes, right? So that means it's a parameter, also mentions the word parameter. Sometimes it doesn't mention parameter, just the word takes. Sometimes it doesn't mention takes and just the word parameter, so it's vice versa. Anything can be mentioned. All right, so I will keep it. Okay, did it mention the type? It doesn't mention the type. All right, but if you look at the examples, it's without any points, so you can assume that it is an integer. So int height, I would write it that way, and then you put the brackets for the method body. Now what should happen here? You need to create several methods. The triangle print method prints the triangle shape. There's another method that you need to code, which is um, line print, which prints a line of stars where the size of the line should be a parameter. So it takes a parameter, it doesn't mention anything about return. Notice it doesn't mention even the word takes, but it mentions the word parameter, right? So we will assume that it's a parameter. And the name of the method is line print. So if I would if I would write the method header for that, it would be public static void, because there is no mention of return, line print, which is the name of the method. It takes the size, right? Again, it doesn't mention anything about the type of the parameter, but you can assume that it should be an int, because the height is int, so the size of the line will automatically be integer. And what else? Call line print in your triangle print method. Note your triangle print method should check that the input is an odd number, as even number triangles don't work. Requirements again should be appropriately commented and efficient, and number literals should be constants and all of that. So how do we code this? The question says your triangle print method should call your line print method, which is mentioned here. Call line print in triangle print. Now, because if you just look at the way this is, printed, you can see that it is repeating. Each line is repeating how many stars should be printed out. So on the first line, there's 1 star, but you're repeating the same thing on the next line, but instead of printing 1 star, you're printing 3 stars. All right, and the same on the next line, you're printing 5, and when you reach the highest, which is here 5, then you start, decreasing again. So on the next line, you'll have 3, and then after that, you'll have 1. So it becomes like a triangle. All right, so here, if we know if we're repeating something, then we should use loops for that. If, for instance, let's say I just wanted to print out the line, one line at a time, all right? How would I do that? Here also, if you consider, let's consider this line. Here also, you see that the stars are repeating. You're printing it once, and then you're printing it twice, and then you're printing it thrice. Depending on the size, you're printing it that many times in one line. So you're basically repeating it, right? So if I were supposed to code this method, and basically if you read the question, it means that the line print method should be used for printing one line at a time. All right. So in this case, I would use a for loop for the repeating thing. I'll start with for int. You can use any loop. Just make sure that it works appropriately. I'm using for loop, but if you think you want to use any other loop, perfectly fine. I'll call it, let's say, count, or name it index. Why to use different names? And I will start from 1, because I want to start counting it as 1, 2, 3, and not 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So I'll start from 1. Index should be less than or equal to. Now, because I'm starting from 1, then I can make it equal to size. If I was starting from 0, you can even start from 0, but then don't make it equal to. It's up to you. All right, so in this case, I'm starting from 1, so I will make it index should be less than or equal to size. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, index is not a very good name because we associate it with arrays. So because I can consider these as, let's say, columns, right? If I were to consider this as one column, this as another, and this as the third one, I can look at it as columns, and these I can look at it as rows. All right. So I'll name it column. I think that's a better name for understanding purposes. So column should be equal to 1, column should be less than size, and then column plus plus. All right. And I will print. So usually we use print ln, right? Notice what happens when I use print ln and what happens when I change it to something else. Now, I'll not use it here for testing purposes. I'll call it in the main method so I can run it directly from there. I'll write it as line print, and then I'll give it a value of 5. It should print 5 stars for me, right? Because I'm starting from 1, I'm going until 5, then it should print 5 stars for me. But notice how it prints. See, it prints on different lines. I wanted it on the same line, right? If you notice here, the method is called println. ln literally stands for line. If I just remove ln, notice what happens. See, it printed all of them on the same line. So that's printing one line, and that is basically used, this method will be used for printing stars on each of the lines. All right, now we're done with the line print, but after each line, I want to move to the next line. How can I move to the next line? You can just literally, once you're done with printing all the stars on the line, and because I don't want to see here, it's right next to the output, it doesn't look good. So if I wanted it to be moved to the next line, I can just print out empty system out print line. So if I run this, notice how it's moved down. Because this is empty, there's nothing being displayed, and because it is println, it moves it to the next line. So basically this is one line at a time. You're printing stars from 1, so you're starting from 1, and then until 5 you're just repeating the print, but you're printing on the same line using the print function and not println. And finally, when you're done printing one line, you're printing the ln, which is a line, but nothing on that line because this is empty. So we're done with that. Now triangle print, where we know that line print is printing one line. So I feel like triangle print should print the whole triangle, meaning all these other rows. So for that, you can do it this way. So you would write for int row is equal to 0 or 1. Let's stick with 1. Row should be less than or equal to the height. So if there are 5, if the number was given as 5, triangle print 5, then you only print 5 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it was 3, so only 3 rows, 1, 2, and 3. So you go until that height, and then row plus plus, and you will have your, again, your rows. So instead of printing this way, you'll start printing this way. I'll start calling my line print method here. So I'll say line print, and I'll pass the row. So if it's the first row, the size will be 1 and you'll only print 1 star. If the row was, let's say, the second row, then you need to, okay, that, let me explain it in a minute. Let's see what happens when I run this. Okay, again, what is happening? It's still printing those 5 stars for me because I never called the triangle print method in the main method. It's still running this method. So if I change this to triangle print and run this, see what happens? It's going from 1, but it's printing 2 also for me, and it's printing 4 also for me, which is not the case. It shouldn't print 2 and 4. It should print 1, 3, 5, and then again 3 and then 1, right? So how can I do that? From 1, I need to move to 3. I know if the row is 1, the line print will only print 1 star. If the row is 2, it will print 2. If the row is 3, it will print 3 because the size depends on the row, right? So all I need to do is make it row is equal to row plus 2. So from 1, it will go to 3. The row will be 3, and then from 3, it will go to 5. So only odd numbers, right? So if I run this, see, 1, 3, and 5. Now we've done half of the triangle. We're printing this much. Now we need to start printing the other ones as well, right? How do we do that? Before this, if I don't, um, just so I don't forget it, we need to check the triangle print method should check the input is an odd number or not. All right, so for that, how do we check if it's an odd number or not? If if the remainder is not equal to 0. So if height remainder 2 modulus 2 is not equal to um, actually if it is equal to 0, then you have to print something, I think. I'm not sure, but let's see. We'll check it from Code Runner when we run this. Let's see what it says. So here we're printing half of the triangle. Now we need to start printing the other half. How do we do that? Here, instead of now going from 1, you can just copy the whole method, paste it below. Instead of now going from, let's say, from 1 to 5, you need to start going from 5 to 1, okay, which is here. So from 1 to 5 and then from 5 to 1. So that means you can start from the height instead of 1. You need to go until it's 1, and now you need to subtract. Let's see what happens. There must be errors, but we'll fix it along the way. Perfect. It's printing it out, but the only issue is it's printing 5 twice, and we don't want that, right? So what do? We, whatever height we have, we minus it from 2 so that we step back. So basically, if it was 5, it will become 3. The starting will become 3. Or if it was 9, the starting will become 7, so on and so forth. So if I run this now, see the half and the other half. If I change the number here to another odd number that's really big, let's consider 27. That's too big. 17. Yeah. So see, it's going until that number. It's not printing that number twice, and then again it's going back down. So this is how it should be printed out. You have your triangle print, which prints your rows. You have your line print, which prints the columns or repeats the stars. You have a print line for the new line that you need to print out. And that, I think, should be it. I'll copy this code, the line print method and the triangle print method. We'll paste it in Code Runner, and let's see if there are any issues. So here I'm going to paste it, copy, selected all, press Shift and Tab so it's properly indented. It doesn't show anything regarding the even, but let's pre-check. Oh, okay, code. Comment. Prints out rows of triangle. Prints the line. Checks if height is even. First half triangle. And then second half of triangle. Pre-check. I hope it works. Okay, so far so good. I don't know still what should be written here, but let's check. Let's check it and see. Okay, this should be printed out. Size must be an odd number, so I'll just print that out here. And then return. If you don't return, what happens is it will start doing all these stuff. When you write return, it prints this out and it leaves the method. If you don't write return, it will keep going and it will keep printing everything out, which we don't want. So if you click on check again, now it's fine. So you had to add return and the statement because of the check. And that's your fourth question.